Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike, and with me, as always, is your other co-host, John. But John, we have a very special guest today. We have the man himself, Ty, from the Solid Verbal podcast, which is, I think, the longest-running independent podcast, at least the college football podcast I know about. So it is a privilege to have you on the show today, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the invite. I'm pleased to be here, talk some Penn State and just college football in general. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time. Yeah,
of course. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I mean, I suppose we should just jump right into it. Although at some point I do want to hear about your boat. And I saw the Solid Verbal flag on Twitter this weekend on a boat. I feel like that's a good sign for where you're at in your preseason, enjoying the summer while you got it. So I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I had some people reach out to me wondering how I was able to take any time over the weekend to basically do anything other than study some of these teams and conferences. And I'm happy to say that it was scheduled long in advance, and I was weirdly able to work around it. And
nice.
My friend who has the boat down in Virginia Beach where I went to visit demanded a flag that he could put on his boat. So, I took a picture with the flag. It was pretty cool.
It was great.
I'm pretty sure nobody down there knew what that was, but quite all right. It was a nice gesture from my friend, and I got to ride in a boat.
That's a good friend.
That's a good friend. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome.
It's funny how you would think that you're busier, which you are busy during the season. We've only been doing this a few years, but it's more work in the off season, working on trying to do all this studying and like you were saying, like trying to find that time. So, and you guys put in a ton of work. So
yeah, I mean, there's definitely like three distinct seasons when it comes to doing this. The first obviously is when the games are going on. And it's when the games are going on, it's easy to kind of know what to talk about because the games tell you what to talk about, right? That's the easy part. The harder part is, I think, right now, which is what I would consider preview season. Everyone's doing previews. You guys are doing previews. You know what kind of work goes into it. It's a lot of studying. It's a big research project to get yourself up to speed with. We're a national show, so I say this all the time. We're never going to know your team or anyone's team better than they do because that's not really what our role is. But on the national level, we're constantly researching, just trying to find interesting tidbits that we can give to the national audience where maybe they don't care about Minnesota football or Penn State football or whoever. But if you can give them one or two things that they can just remember and store in the back of their minds, if it comes up or if they see a game on TV, it gives them a reason to care. So we're after stuff like that. And it can take a while to find that type of info. And then I would say the hardest yet is the off season, because the off season, and we're all in the same boat when it comes to this. We're just kind of making it up as we go. Every now and again, I guess the news cycle has changed a great deal over the last couple of years with the portal and just, rules constantly changing, realignment and all this money administrative stuff that we got to deal with. But it's more often than not a situation where we're kind of inventing concepts on the fly to keep people engaged. So there's a lot that goes into it, as I'm sure you guys know well, but the good news is that we're getting awfully close to the season, and that's when the fun starts.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're pumped. All right, John, you got the first question, I believe. I think we should launch right into it because I know Ty's got a lot going on.
Yeah, well, before we get into that, I just want to say if you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26 and me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. And please, Ty, tell the people where they can find you and your podcast.
Yeah, you can find my show's called Solid Verbal. You can find it pretty much any podcast app, YouTube. Just like you guys, just search for the Solid Verbal, search for College Football Podcast. You can follow us on social media at Solid Verbal on pretty much all the platforms at this point. And love to have you.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Well, yeah, let's launch into some of these questions. We will try to, take it easy on you here. But first and foremost, I was just curious, and Mike and I have been talking about this. So we kind of want to know a little bit about your background. How did you fall in love with college football, and why Notre Dame? We understand you went to Penn State, which is why you are a Penn State fan. But where did Notre Dame come from?
So I'm from Eastern Pennsylvania. I'm still here now. And it just so happens that my part of the state, my part of the country has like a very heavy Catholic influence. So I was raised Catholic, didn't go to Catholic school or anything like that, but pretty much my family, extended family, you name it, everybody was very into Notre Dame college football. And so that was pretty much all I knew growing up. Everybody wanted to watch Notre Dame every Saturday they were on. And that was just sort of ingrained in me from as far back as I could remember. So, obviously I have seen the full kind of spectrum of Notre Dame football over the years, that being really bad teams, most recently really good teams, kind of gone the full gamut with the Irish. But some of my earliest memories are like Rocket Ishmael and Rick Myrer and some of those teams in like the late 80s, early 90s timeframe, when like my real formative years as a football fan. That's kind of when it really became real for me. And, before long I was making videos on my mom's old camcorder talking about college football for nobody to see other than me, just because I figured out how to work it basically. But yeah, that's about as far back as I go with Notre Dame, and that's just sort of always been with me. But then I didn't get into Notre Dame. Apparently I wasn't smart enough to get into Notre Dame. I tried, but I did not get into Notre Dame.
They're lost.
Right. That's what I said. And, at the time I thought I wanted to go into broadcasting. I ended up going to Penn State to get into sports broadcasting, ended up switching majors into something else. And then after college, ended up kind of starting this whole podcast thing back in, I started podcasting in about 2004. So I've been there right since the very beginning. And weirdly, I've kind of developed like these two tracks of Notre Dame fandom and then some more recent Penn State fandom, just because I went to school there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that's really interesting. And it's really cool. And I totally get it. I mean, I didn't go to the University of Minnesota like Mike, but I just always grew up same kind of thing. Like, you watch the Gophers on Saturday, pay attention, especially, obviously hockey too here was always a big deal. So just by proxy, I always watched the, football and got really into that. And then when I met Mike, when we became friends, I obviously became much more of an avid Gopher fan. So
I'm a third generation fan. I didn't have a choice.
Yeah. I mean, look, fandom comes in all shapes and sizes. And as I'm sure you guys know from people that interact with your show here, and as I know from many people that interact with us over the years, people find weird reasons to root for teams, or just these weird little moments within college football that they connect with for one reason or another that helps drive their fandom in one way. In some cases, one way one season, another the next. It's just the best sport in the world. It's a ton of fun.
It really is.
Agreed.
And on that, now you talked about, you have been podcasting since 2004, but there was a time when you had a day job.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there was.
When, and I got to ask, like, how did the podcast evolve that, you made that decision? I guess when and why did you ultimately say, I'm all in on the Solid Verbal, I'm done doing anything else, like this is what I'm doing?
So there's a funny story about this that I'll try to keep as short as I can, but
you have no time limits here, Ty.
No time. Okay. I don't want to be the sort of ungracious guest and just talk your ear off. So I'll try to keep to the point as best
they
I
get
can.
tired of listening to us.
So we started this show back in 2008, and at the time, nobody knew what podcasting was. Mm-hmm. Nobody knew. I mean, to some extent, more people now know what it is than certainly they did 5 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But, it hadn't yet gotten to the point where anybody knew what it was. Downloading a show was just a chore. We stuck with it. We were one of the first college football shows. I can't say definitively we were the first. I think we were the first that got a reasonably large following and kind of grew over the years. But we've been at this for a while, and the show had grown little by little each and every year. We finally came to a point, I would say in about 2018, 2019, where it was apparent that podcasting wasn't going to go away anytime soon. I had been of the mind that podcasting was going to die like 7 times over. And maybe that's because I had just been in the game for so long. I don't know. But like 2018, 2019, even though there were plenty of moments before then that kind of confirmed the point that no, this is not going away. For some reason, that's when it really clicked for me that, hey, this is probably something that, if you put more into it, you'll get more out of it. So I came to a point in time in 2020 where everybody was home because of COVID, and our show had done really well. 2020 was a weird year for everybody, especially college football fans, because of, weird schedule and just it had been dragged through political mud. And I mean, you guys know it was a weird time to be a sports fan and a college football fan.
It's got ugly.
Yeah. And we happened to have on our show an interview with Matthew McConaughey, who at the time was promoting a book, wrote a book, was on a million other podcasts, but he came on our show one October night. And I remember thinking afterwards, because I had been grappling with this idea of, should I stick with the job? Should I move on? Should I, what should I do here? I was kind of working 2 full-time gigs at that point. And after the McConaughey interview, I came downstairs from my studio. My wife and I had several drinks, and I kind of just came to this realization that let's go for it. Let's make the move. If I can have this guy on, what else can I do if I really put myself into it?
Yeah.
And so that began like 6 months, I would say, in earnest of soul searching, trying to find like ways to make both work, because I worked for a good company with good people who supported me and knew about the show and all that. But eventually I woke up, let's say 6 months later, after having gone through all sorts of different possibilities in my head, and just came to the conclusion, like, you just got to leave. You just got to make this go and see what happens. So that was July of 2021, where we just crossed, I guess, the 4-year mark, if memory serves, 4 years, and kind of going strong as this is my full-time thing now. So yeah, it's been quite a ride. It was definitely the right decision, and it took a while for me to convince myself that it was. So I'm happy to be here and doing this, and very grateful.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's such an awesome run. And I remember hearing you guys, and I want to say like 2012, and you had somebody actually asked you what a solid verbal was, and you guys were like, I don't know. It's a podcast.
Yeah. We've had so many weird interactions over the years just because we've been doing this for so long. And the joke that I used to tell, mainly before I was married, was if you ever try telling somebody in a bar that you do a podcast, this is 2010, 2011. It was not a pickup line. I mean, it was true. People would look at you like you had 2 heads. Like, what's that word? What is this? So it's
right
to the point, like, there have just been so many instances along the way where it feels like the whole medium is dying and it's not going anywhere and it's not catching steam. But then, Apple puts out an app, or cereal comes along, or like you've had all these little moments that I think have catapulted this into something that is now very much in the public consciousness. And yeah, I'm privileged to say I was kind of one of the first doing it, and maybe I'll be one of the last 2. We'll see.
We hope so.
I hope not. We don't want him to be the last one doing it.
No,
ever.
but
last man standing. We get all the numbers.
But
You
we
could
hope
be.
you're doing it well into
Yeah.
old age and all that kind of stuff. You have such a wealth of knowledge, and I remember actually that podcast where you announced it, that you were going full time and all in on this, and that was amazing. It was amazing to hear that, because again, at that time, even in 2021, I don't think that was still very common. It was kind of just becoming a thing where people were able to make a living off of this or YouTube shows or what have you. This is pretty cool. I'm amazed. Yeah.
Yeah, I am too, honestly. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not grateful to have the opportunity. And to more to the point, just kind of amazed that the medium that I was lucky enough to get involved with this when I got involved with this. It's a lot harder now, I think, starting from scratch. We just happen to be, kind of like the first movers. We didn't have any plans like this back then. I mean, we were in our late 20s. I was talking into a webcam, like we didn't know what we were doing. We still arguably don't know what we're doing. We know a little bit more about it now, but it was just sort of right place, right time, a lot of luck. I like to think we've gotten better at it over the years, but it's been a lot of tiny little fortuitous moments that have led me to this point.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that is awesome. But we, this isn't just a Ty Hildenbrandt show. This is a Penn State preview. So let's turn our attention to your Nittany Lions a little bit. So the first thing I have to ask as we're going in on this, James Franklin, in my opinion, I think John shares this also, has been kind of nothing short of spectacular as a head coach. He's had some painful losses to Michigan, Ohio State, and I actually just rewatched the 60-minute version of that Rose Bowl loss to USC.
Yeah.
Which was, that was rough. But it's worth reminding people that before Franklin took the Penn State job, he went 9-4 2 years in a row at Vandy. That's really impressive. And then at Penn State, he had to do a rebuild of the program coming out of the sanctions era. So Franklin has a Big Ten title, 2 playoff wins last year, 6 double-digit win seasons, including the last 3 years consecutively. Last year, of course, they lost in the college football playoff semifinals in a game that could have easily gone the other way if Drew Allard just didn't throw it when he did across the middle. So how do you feel about the James Franklin regime, and why do you think it is that he gets so much hate in comparison to his peers?
It's a good question. I mean, this is a proud football program, and I think, like you see often, Penn State's in a situation where they just have not been able to get over the hump. And so there is, in general, an impatience in the fan base, specifically with regard to teams like Ohio State and Michigan. As those teams have risen, Michigan won a national championship 2 years ago. Ohio State won it last year. Obviously, Ohio State's won a lot over the years, though this was their first title in about a decade. I think there is always this tendency to sort of compare the Penn State program, compare James Franklin to some of those other schools that are having a little bit more success. And so, despite the fact that he's been a really good coach, he's won over 100 games in his time at Penn State. Like you said, a bunch of double-digit win seasons.
70% of his conference games or something like that. I mean, a lot.
The only time they didn't go to a bowl was in 2020 when they, backed out, didn't want to go to a bowl. No one really wanted to go to a bowl. So every other step along the way, they've been really, really solid. It's been, in many regards, a slow build to kind of get to this moment in time where they've got a roster that everybody is amped about and talking up as potentially a national title contender. So I think it's truly just, there is this like shiny object that Penn State has yet to capture. It's not even a national championship. I think it's really just beating a team of pure substance that everybody knows is a good blue blood program that you can feel good about, you can build on, and you can kind of use to establish some momentum. And they just have fallen short of doing. They've beaten some good teams, but I really think it's a Ohio State and Michigan problem more than anything. Now, they don't have Michigan this year. They'll have another crack at Ohio State, but it's been confounding because he's a really good coach. He's done a good job building this roster. He's definitely infused the roster with incredible talent. They're recruiting better now than they ever could have dreamed possible.
Oh,
and what they've got on
what he's doing. Yeah.
What they've got on the roster in the 2 deep this year is preposterously loaded.
Yeah.
But it's just getting over that hump and beating some of those teams that the fan base really wants to hang its hat on.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. That's legit. And we see that a lot with a lot of people, and Penn State fans who get upset. And I guess, like, as Gopher fans, we would just love to have that problem, but we don't. Man,
we went 10-2 again.
But when you live in that year after year after year after year, and your expectations are obviously higher, as they should be, I can understand where that frustration comes from, but at the same time would love to have 10-2 every year.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a first world college football problem.
Sure. Yeah.
And still, you would be amazed at the people that I know personally, or the people that write into the show that are frustrated with Franklin. I think they recognize that he's clearly built a bit of a juggernaut now in State College, and he's got the support of the administration. I mean, everybody is rowing in the same direction here. Not to borrow a pun from
they are good friends. They are good
I know. But like, not to borrow the row the boat thing, but like everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction at this point, and it's just getting over that proverbial hump that I think is causing the most heartburn in the fan base.
Sure. Okay. Well, moving on a little bit here, and just to kind of bring the Irish back into this, so there's like a lot of vitriol on Twitter between Irish and Big Ten fans, and actually a lot between Penn State lately and Irish fans. I've seen, some pretty brutal things going on there. So, so how do you feel about the Big Ten, due to your Irish and Penn State fandom, considering that the Irish do not like the Big Ten? Obviously, they understand and talk a lot about how the Big Ten wants them in the conference, but they value their independence, all that kind of stuff. But how are you, since you have these, do you have a problem like battling those feelings, from day to day, or how does that go?
Not for me personally. I mean, I think I get it more from podcast listeners who just sort of find out about it by happenstance and are confused, which is generally the reaction that I get when I tell people kind of my 1A, 1B fandom situation. Look, I mean, the Big Ten is now grown to 18 teams. It is an absolute juggernaut. It is a cash cow. It knows its worth. I think the people that run the Big Ten, as well as really every other conference, would love to have Notre Dame, because Notre Dame in its own right is a cash cow.
Yeah.
I have always been a proponent of Notre Dame joining a conference. I would love to see them in the Big Ten. I think it would be great. It's a lot of natural rivalries there. I think they would geographically fit in perfectly from a culture standpoint, you name it. It's like tailor-made for Notre Dame. Notre Dame does not value that. Notre Dame is dyed in the wool, independence till we die, or until there's more money, and it's kind of ridiculous to stay independent, one or the other. So I would like to see it, but the fact that they value their independence as much as they do, and that's kind of the identity that they've created for the institution and for the football program, then so be it. But I would love to see it at some point if it ever comes to that, and who knows, in like 10 years it could. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of speculation obviously going on out there, and a lot of valid points from both sides. With the way that it's trending, it seems like it's inevitable. It to me anyways, and this is just my opinion, and I'm sure I know there are a lot of arguments against it.
This is John's hobby horse.
This is something I am a little
You've been riding this for a long time.
I got hooked on the realignment thing, and honestly, and sometimes I hate myself for it, because like I know that it's just like the trendy cool thing to be and where talk about, but I did get a little hooked on it. And again, like the reasons you pointed out when it comes to Notre Dame, and I think it would be a fantastic addition in that regard. It just seems like things are trending in the way that college football is changing, and with the money and the way things are going with the Big Ten and the SEC. Now, again, not saying it's going to happen. It might not. Obviously, Notre Dame has a ton of leverage and probably other things up their sleeve that we don't even know about to maintain their independence. But, we'll see. I think it's just obviously a lot of things are changing very quickly, and it's hard to keep up and know exactly which direction it's going to go.
Yeah, I had heard a couple years ago from somebody that would know that there were active conversations on the Notre Dame side about making a move and not staying independent, and that it was sort of like an 11th hour thing where it didn't come to fruition, but very easily could have. And, I had heard stuff before that too, that they're just always kind of taking the pulse of what's going on around college football. And obviously it serves them from a business standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, from like 80 different standpoints, to make sure that they're in the know with what's going on, well connected to where the game might be going next, and position the program best so that they're not kind of on the outside looking in. Not that Notre Dame would be, because again, they are a cash cow, but you don't necessarily want to be the one without a chair when the music stops, right? So they want to make sure that they're kind of in the know and are well versed in what's coming down the pike. And I tend to agree with you. I think eventually it will be inevitable, despite the fact that they really do truly value the independent side of this. At 2032 or 2031, whenever it is that the ACC is going to blow up, that would be the next thing that I'm looking for as, potentially more realignment. And I think Notre Dame could be part of that, but I've said that many times over and I've been wrong every time. So who knows?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep.
All right. Should we talk about this Nittany Lions team? And John, you want to go through the offense? Yeah.
We're going to break down the offense here a little bit. First off, I'd love to just hear your thoughts, because it's an amazing hire that was made with Andy Kotelnicki. both Mike and I are huge fans of him as an offensive coordinator. He's so innovative. His offenses are so interesting and fun to watch. Now, after a year under Andy Kotelnicki, like what evolution are we seeing in the offensive scheme and the play calling? Do you think how much do you expect it to change with some of the new weapons, which we'll go through each position group as well? But just your thoughts on Andy in particular.
Well, yeah, I mean, given where they came from, I think it's been a bit of a revelation. I mean, he, like you said, he's super innovative with his play calling. He's super adaptable, and he's willing, I think, to work with the personnel in a way that a lot of guys aren't. I mean, that was his calling card at Kansas, despite the fact that they had this high-flying offense. They were actually a better team on the ground than a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
And that obviously that suits Penn State pretty well, given where they're at right now with their backfield and where they were last year as well. So, I mean, just his ability to use the tools at his disposal is, I think, the most exciting thing about what he brings to the equation. Certainly, you can look back at what he did with Tyler Warren as a great example of that. It was almost comical how much they used Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
And we made the joke. It wasn't even a joke. I made the comment many times on my show, like, hey, it'd be nice if someone else got the ball. Not because Tyler Warren isn't good, but because at some point they're going to have to give somebody else the ball. And they just kept giving it to Tyler Warren. He's a first-round draft pick for a good reason. But Andy Kotelnicki had the wherewithal to realize that when you've got a player like that, who you can use in so many different ways, you just keep using him. It doesn't matter if I'm sick of him. What matters is, does it work? And it damn near got him into the national championship game. So, I mean, he's really good at kind of assembling the pieces, figuring out the best way to get the most out of them. Mm-hmm. And I just think that versatility has made the offense much, much better for it. We saw Drew Aller take some big steps forward last season. I think it's due in no small part to what Andy Kotelnicki built around him and gradually kind of stepped him into more of a leading role, throwing down the field and that type of thing within this offense. So I would if I was pointing to one thing, I would just say the versatility of the offense, not necessarily a specific scheme, but that's more of a philosophy that it has been a really welcome addition for Penn State.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, we've been a fan of his since Kansas. He just really came on the scene there. So,
and I'm I'm very publicly on record saying that I think that Tyler Warren should have been a Heisman finalist.
Yes,
not saying he should have won, but saying he should have been a finalist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, they used him as a Swiss Army knife, and his numbers were incredible. The ways that they used him as a tight end were kind of incredible. I'm not sure how many other offensive coordinators out there, even if they had Tyler Warren, would think to use him in the same way that Penn State did. So, let's say no more, right?
Well, moving on to quarterback and Drew Aller here, who, there's a lot of buzz about him, maybe being also a Heisman candidate, depending on how well it goes. I know he's had a lot of high expectations from when he first stepped onto campus. This is kind of where we expected him to go. But there's a lot of thoughts on whether or not he's a game manager or if he's, an actual elite quarterback. He, unfortunately, as we know, and we'll talk a little bit more about the receivers as well, there just hasn't been many targets to throw to. So do you think, what are reasonable expectations for Aller in 2025? Do you think he could be a Heisman contender, or do you think he will just be kind of that well above average game manager? Obviously, he's not untalented, of course.
No, he's a 5-star.
Yeah. I think he's a legit Heisman contender this year. I think he has to be. I think when they first played him regularly, there was a little bit more of a game manager aspect to his game. And I think that's maybe in part because they didn't have the targets out wide, but I think bigger picture, they just didn't want to give him too much too soon.
Sure.
And we saw him take a pretty good sized step forward last season. And as they added a little bit more responsibility to his plate, you also started to see a little bit more emotion. And there were a couple moments last season. We saw it a bit in the semifinal. We saw it a bit throughout the course of the Big Ten season as well, where Aller was really wearing his heart on his sleeve. He was being a little bit more of a vocal leader, at sometimes trying to play too much hero ball. But you really started to see him grow into more of that leadership role as a starting quarterback. And I would expect that this season that's just going to continue. Maybe he can like moderate some of those emotions a little bit better and avoid a back-breaking mistake. I mean, he's been very responsible with the football in the last 2 years, something like 49 touchdowns to just 10 interceptions. He's been a very, very good quarterback.
Yes.
You can see the arm talent. You can see what he's got. But I say this a lot. Drew Aller picked up the position late.
Mm-hmm.
He picked up the position late. He did not start as early as many of his peers. He is still very much learning on the fly. He's learned quickly. He's developed nicely. I would expect that we see another jump forward this year. His targets this year, I would expect, are better out wide. I don't think they can be much worse. Mm-hmm. So, I think he's going to have a better supporting cast to showcase what he can do. But yeah, at a minimum, the season hasn't started yet, but he's definitely one of the names that deserves to be in the Heisman conversation. And I suspect a year from now, we're going to be talking about him as a pretty high NFL draft pick.
Yeah. Well, God forbid, anything does happen to Aller, and with Bull Perbula moving on to Mizzou, who do you think, like, how does the QB room depth look? Who's going to back him up? What are your thoughts on it?
It's Ethan Grunkemeyer. Mm-hmm. And he's been the guy that, if you've seen anything on social media over the last couple months, he and Aller are pretty tight. They've been training together. They've been trying to develop together. So I would expect that he would be the next man up. In the event that Aller goes down. I would expect that they would try to wrap Aller in as much bubble wrap as possible, especially since he's got a pretty good cast of characters that are more than likely better at running the ball than he is. But I would say it's probably Grunk if something should happen to Aller.
Okay. Well, since we touched a little bit on the wide receivers, let's just keep going on with that now. So how much do you think the wide receiver room is going to improve? Like, you have the additions of Julian Fleming and the return of Keandre Lambert-Smith.
No, not Julian Fleming.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you brought on Trevor Pena. My bad. And so with these,
Kyron Hudson, Devontae Ross from USC and Troy, and yeah.
So you've got some new targets, some people that have a lot of talent, some proven talent. And so, how do you think it's going to improve upon that? And then also, like, who do you think is going to be at the top of that wide receiver room, like a breakout candidate at the wideout position?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to any of that. I can't even, I think it's even a stretch to say that these guys are proven. They might be a little more proven, but it's just sort of been a revolving door this offseason. The entire wide receiver room from a year ago left. Kyron Hudson is like a physical presence who comes over from USC. You've got a speed demon like a Devontae Ross from Troy. Trevor Pena obviously comes down from Syracuse. That was a name that got a lot of attention here, most recently. So you kind of factor that in along with some of the other guys they have. Taysir Denmark's a name, Liam Cohen's a name. I'm just listing guys at this point, kind of in lieu of not actually knowing who's going to pop. But they got to have one of these guys pop. They just have to. They have to find some way to get a little bit more out of that receiver room because the last 2 years, it has been some combination of A, guys not getting open, B, the quarterback maybe making wrong reads, or C, it being a broken scheme. Somewhere along the way, and more of a broken scheme a couple years ago than last season, for sure. But like the wide receiver room at Penn State has not been the same in a good long time. And I think we're used to this position group being one that puts guys in the NFL, Jahan Dotson or whoever. We just have not seen that recently. They are grasping to try and find somebody that can step in and make that receiver room better. I think they understood the assignment this offseason. So I think what they went out and did was smart. And I like what they brought in. I do think it's a better receiver room now, but it's definitely not a proven commodity. By no stretch of the imagination is it proven, and I don't think at this point it's anything you can really trust.
Yeah, I mean, I have some high expectations personally. I really love Trevor Pena. I mean, he led Syracuse with 84 catches, 941 yards, and 9 touchdowns. And I think he's a great route runner. He's got great hands. I'm really excited to see him. And like you said about, Penn State not really putting a lot of elite wide receivers on the field recently, because that's something we were used to seeing for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Yep. James Franklin always had a couple in his back pocket.
Always had a dude or two, right?
Yeah.
It's odd that it
KJ
just kind of
Hamler,
fell off a little bit,
whoever.
Over the last few years. So I'm just kind of curious, obviously he's recruiting very well. So it's just been a little odd that he hasn't been hitting on any receivers recently.
Yeah, and I mean, they've had a bit of a revolving door at like receivers coach. And I just, you could point to a million different reasons as to why you think this has happened. But the truth of the matter is they just haven't really hit.
Yeah.
They haven't really hit on these guys. Some of the guys they have hit on maybe have gone elsewhere and either, done better or played for a different scheme that suited their skill set a little bit better. It just has not happened. They're in a bit of a wide receiver drought lately. And that's, I think, one of the main obvious questions for Penn State this year. You could point to probably like 3 or 4 questions that everybody knows about, and it is not a great secret. And this is one of them. It's probably the biggest. It's who are the damn pass catchers, and can Drew Aller get him the ball?
Yeah. Well, to something that isn't a big secret, something that is very dependable and reliable, that's Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Your running back room is ridiculous. Probably the best duo in college football, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And, with them both returning, are we going to continue to see them reaching new heights and new ceiling? I know that every once in a while, it kind of traded every game in a way, Nick Singleton seemed to be at the top of his game and Katron Allen wasn't quite there, or vice versa. It was really kind of cool seeing that duo go and work together. So, and also, is there a third back emerging, do you think?
Well, okay. So on Singleton and Allen, listen, it's rare this day and age, especially in the era of the portal and NIL money, that you're going to keep both these guys around.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they were able to do that is a huge deal. And I think it speaks to the culture at Penn State that these guys would have been drafted, but wanted to stick around and play for something bigger on the college level. An interesting factoid is that both guys could actually break the Penn State rushing record this season.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's saying
yeah,
something.
it's kind of wild that they're both in the same roster. Look, they're going to be the focal point. Both those guys can be the focal point. I could sit here, I could list names, but it's going to be Katron Allen. It's going to be Nick Singleton. And I think the offense is going to be based first and foremost around those guys because outside of Aller, that is what you can trust in the most. You can probably trust more in those guys than you can in Aller, honestly. So I'm super excited to see what Andy Kotelnicki does now. Year 2 with the scheme, no Tyler Warren, knowing that he has these 2 monsters in the backfield. I think we're going to see a lot of creativity there. I would expect more of the same from what we saw a year ago. Both these guys happen to be really, really good friends. So they thrive on being part of the same backfield, working with each other, working together to kind of elevate the running back room. And I'm really excited to see what they cook up. I mean, these are 2 guys quite literally that could start for, 125 other rosters, if not more.
Everyone who's not Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. So I'm thrilled to see what they cook up this year, knowing that the personnel has changed a bit on offense, and they might need to do something a little bit different than what we've seen over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, or we talked a lot about Tyler Warren already, and just talking about his absence, what is that? What kind of effect is that going to have on the offense, and who is going to, take up his mantle at tight end?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the big question, right? Tyler Warren was the Swiss Army knife for this offense. He led the team in receptions and yards. He was, running the ball sometimes. I mean, throwing passes, that you name it. So they've got some guys.
He punted once too, I think.
Punted, yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
did.
it's just, what can't the guy do, right?
Yeah.
So they've got a guy like a Khalil Dinkins on the roster. He's not quite the pass catcher, not even close to the pass catcher that Tyler Warren was. He's more of a blocking guy. Luke Reynolds is, I think, a name that you can expect to hear a lot more of at the tight end position. They did just get a 5-star Andrew Olesh, who's actually from my neck of the woods here in Eastern PA. And I'm curious to see if they integrate him into the offense at all. So they've got other guys that I think are blue chip caliber. But it's just Tyler Warren was a special creature. And it's probably unrealistic to expect that they'll get the same level of production out of any of these tight ends. Maybe not even in the aggregate.
Yeah. I mean, he was such a special player on so many levels. It was like he was a cheat code, and like it was watching a video game. And there's only a few of
I
those
didn't think
people.
you could ever do better than Pat Fryermuth. That guy was
Seriously.
terrifying. He was
Yeah.
terrifying. But
Yeah.
like Tyler Warren was somehow better. Yeah.
It was incredible. So, yeah. Well, and last but not least, probably the most important position group here is the offensive line. Now, obviously, you're bringing a ton of veterans back, and also like you just recruit so much on offensive line, or so well on the offensive line. So, what major losses are there and like gaps you're going to have to fill, and how do you expect like the depth and the cohesion of this offensive line compared to come together, I guess, compared to 2024?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it going back to the comment about Andy Kotelnicki at Kansas, he wanted to build a really tough ground attack, and he was able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun to watch. I think what he did last season with Penn State, in just finding ways for both Katron Allen and Nick Singleton to generate more chunk plays was a very big deal. They had virtually none of that the year before he got there. And this was after Nick Singleton had an incredible freshman campaign. His sophomore campaign, it kind of felt like it stalled out a little bit. Last year, we got back to some of the bigger chunk plays and home run threats on the ground that I think make him truly special. So now with that as context, 4 starters, I think, back along the offensive line. So this is a veteran group that knows the assignment that I think you can do a little bit more with. They have recruited really, really well there. So there's plenty of depth along the offensive line. This is also a program that very recently has put guys in the NFL. So it's sort of been able to crank itself up a little bit and almost recruit to itself over the years. I would expect it just, kind of, I don't know if this answers your question or not, but I think my biggest expectation for the line, or the thing that I am looking for more than anything, is finding more ways to unlock those home run threats in the backfield. Because especially Singleton, that is Singleton's thing. Singleton is not unlike Jeremiah Love. I'm not saying they're the same player, but it's not unlike Jeremiah Love in that you could see a game in which Nick Singleton has 8 carries for like 163 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of which went for 92 yards or something. He's that type of back, and they strayed away from that a little bit with Mike Yursich in his last year in State College. They got back to it a little bit more last season under Kotelnicki, and I would expect now with the line in front of him and obviously with the play caller being so innovative, they will continue to find ways to kind of unlock that threat. And then beyond that, what I would say is having that veteran group up front is really important when you've got potentially a first-round NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Not just a first-round NFL quarterback, but a passing game that's sort of been on life support in spite of having a quarterback that's really high caliber. So I would like to make sure that if I'm the play caller, that we are not only steering into that home run threat in the backfield, but also giving the quarterback enough time or building a scheme that is conducive to the personnel so that you can get the most out of this rebuilt receiver room.
Yeah, I mean, both Mike and I assume you as well. Like there are a lot of high expectations here for Penn State in this offense, and man, if they can hit on 1 or 2 of those receivers, it's game over. It really is. So I mean, as of right now, I think this could be one of the most impressive offenses and just absolutely dominant, if not a little bit reminiscent of Michigan a couple of years ago, where they just, like we always talked about that Michigan team is like a boa constrictor. Like it got you in its grasp, and it just squeezed and squeezed and squeezed until you just had nothing left. And that's why, and you just gave up. And that's kind of where I see this team being almost that dominant, So
yeah, I mean I get the comparison, and certainly with what I think Penn State will look like on defense, which probably isn't as good as it was a year ago, but it'll be close. They will have something of a boa constrictor feel to them if they get up on you, because they will be able to run the ball. But I think the difference being, if you're looking and comparing those two schools, Michigan was very, very centered around the run, even with a guy like a JJ McCarthy. I mean, it wasn't about JJ McCarthy. In some of the biggest games, he threw like 10 passes.
Yeah.
They were so centered around the run. That was like their whole identity. Penn State's going to be a little bit more varied. I don't expect them to be that unbalanced when it comes to their play calling. At the end of the day, you'll take whatever works, right? If you win, if you're national champions like Michigan was, it doesn't matter what the scheme is, you'll take it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some similarities, but I think ultimately the scheme's going to be a little bit more versatile than what we saw from Michigan a couple of years back.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think this Penn State offense is going to be really, really dynamic just because you're going to have, I know you can say they're not proven, but they all did well. I guess Devontae Ross and Trevor Pena seem pretty proven to me.
They're more proven. They're more proven for sure.
I feel like those guys are going to do big things, and that's going to open up the offense entirely. So I'm going to be with Ty and against you, John, there. Just there. Fourth and short, you need it bad. It's behind. You're going behind Vega, right? Ioane.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm cool with that.
You need it. It's going to be him.
Or you go power I behind Vega and then put Katron Allen in front of Nick Singleton.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Yeah, that's terrifying. All right. Awesome. John, you all done on offense, or can I talk defense?
Go right ahead.
Awesome. So I like to nerd out on defense because that's the kind of guy I am. I got to talk Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
Comes over from hated conference foe Ohio State as the new DC. That was considered the biggest assistant coaching coup of the offseason. And for good reason. Knowles has been a college football revelation the past several years. He had a long, somewhat under the radar, successful tenure at Duke under David Cutcliffe. But then in 2018, Mike Gundy hired him away at Oklahoma State. And he had one mediocre year, and then that defense just took off and was great the rest of his tenure. And then, Ryan Day hired him away at the end of 2022 there. And man, Knowles' 2024 Buckeyes defense was fantastic. They finished first in the nation in opposing yards per play and in opposing points per game, giving up just 12.9. That's spectacular. So Knowles reportedly didn't get along with OSU D-line coach Larry Johnson, so maybe that was a factor. But regardless of why, the point is Franklin was able to hire Knowles away from Ohio State, and that's a big deal. So you just stole the best defensive coordinator in the country from Ohio State. What are your expectations in year one?
Well, they didn't steal him. They got to pay him $3.1 million, which is almost an asinine number.
Yeah.
For an assistant coach, it's good that they can afford it. And more to the point of everybody, I'll just say it, rowing the boat in the same direction. You can only make a move like that if you've got buy-in from the higher ups, and Penn State clearly does. Look, even though Tom Allen was a good defensive coordinator, and I said this on my show, even though he was a good defensive coordinator, you definitely could have passed around a hat in the Penn State community and collected more than enough money for a first-class ticket for Tom Allen to go literally anywhere else.
Interesting.
There was some, I would say, frustration with the way that he called defense, and I'm not even sure I fully understand it. It was clearly a great defense last season, but I was really surprised by the feedback that we got from the Penn State community, from the feedback that I got from friends out in the Penn State community who just generally felt like Tom Allen wasn't it. So you now kind of move to get Jim Knowles after Tom Allen left to go to Clemson. And he's the best in the game right now. You're paying him accordingly. And I think what Jim Knowles has been really, really good at is understanding his personnel. It's same deal with Kotelnicki, right? They know the personnel. He tends to be a master at making in-game adjustments. He tends to be a master at, taking the most or getting the most out of specific player traits that might go overlooked. And so, to put him on a defense like this now, which is just stocked with talent, you got to be really excited about what he can do. I mean, this is a guy with clearly a proven track record for working with superstars on the college level. Full stop. I mean, he did it last year. So I'm really excited to see if he can elevate this defense, take the defense to another level. Again, a defense that was already very, very good. Put Abdul Carter on the New York Giants. I'm I'm just I'm really eager to see if there are any subtle tweaks that we see, what those subtle differences are as the season moves on, because there will be some. They won't always be apparent to the eye, but Jim Knowles has been very, very good at doing it over the last decade or so.
Absolutely. Lo, let's talk about that D line, since you referred to Abdul Carter, obviously a big loss. He was the best defensive lineman in college football, and he was dominant in every single game except for against Ariante Ursary, who played really well against him for some reason.
Yeah.
But you still have defensive end Denai Dennis Sutton, who's arguably, him or Ueagalele at Oregon, probably the best. One of those two is the best edge rusher in the Big Ten. Could be a top 15 pick in next year's draft. The other DN, you've got Zariah Fisher, who's a senior. He's played well as a backup in the past. Yep. Behind them, you've got, some promising younger players in Harvey and Kimaju. And at defensive tackle, you start returner Zane Durant alongside fellow senior Alonzo Ford. Xavier Gilliam and Ty Blanding also will be in the mix. So this is a really experienced D-line, especially among the starters. Does the rotation sound correct to you, or where am I off? And also, could this line be as great as last year's unit, even without Abdul Carter?
Well, I think Denai Dennis Sutton's about to be a household name.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this moment when more people realize DDS is legit. And to your point, I mean, he's a big kid, 6'5", 265, 270. He will absolutely take the mantle and be one of the next great Penn State edge rushers. So I'm excited to see what he can do now. Obviously, he paired pretty well with Abdul Carter last year, but this year it's I think more his show. But to the point, like, they have a steady supply of edge rushers. The one name that you didn't mention was Max Granville, who is, I believe, a freshman or redshirt freshman. He, I think, is somebody that I'm at least hoping to see more of this year, to see what he can do out there on the field, because I've heard really, really good things about him as well. So they'll be fine at the edge rusher position. They've got plenty of guys that they can rotate in, but certainly DDS. Zane Durant in the middle is going to be a problem for a lot of people too.
Yeah, he is.
He's going to be a problem. He is not the biggest defensive tackle, but he's just really, really good. And I'm curious to see what Jim Knowles does with him, how he's able to kind of unlock and get more production out of him, because he's, like you said, he's been on campus for a while. He's a senior. This is clearly somebody that has been with this program for a while and kind of knows what it takes to play along that Penn State defensive line. So, yeah, I mean, they just have so much experience up front between DDS, between, I think you mentioned Ford, between Zane Durant and Fisher. I mean, you're talking about four guys with senior, seniority, for lack of better terms. They're seniors is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So these guys have been around for a while, and they kind of know what it takes to take this defense to the standard that Penn State's used to. So I'm pretty excited about what the line has in store. Maybe a rung down without Abdul Carter, but still plenty there to feel pretty excited about what they've got.
Yeah, it feels like when Kirby really had it rolling at Georgia, that it's that kind of thing that Penn State has on the D-line going right now, and it's really exciting to watch. All right, let's talk just a little bit about linebacker. You returned Tony Rojas, who is freakishly fast and extremely good at football, but he was reportedly, at least according to our friend PSU recruiting Mish, he was reportedly playing with a broken shoulder last year.
Yeah.
So I imagine he'll be a lot better this year now that he's healthy. And then Amari Campbell transfers in from UNC, and he was all ACC last year. You got Dom DeLuca, Anthony Specca in the mix for snaps. How do you see those snaps breaking down? Will it be mostly starters getting the reps, do you think? Or do you think the backups will rotate a lot too? Or will they mostly be special teams guys? And what do you think of the unit as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to say that they're going to be just as strong as a year ago, but I kind of feel like they will be. I think they're in a really good spot at the linebackers position. Look, they've got plenty of experience there as well. It does not help when you've got an injury to one of your starting linebackers that he's trying to play through, but we saw that with Penn State last year. Even with Abdul Carter in the playoff games, he was willing to kind of go through it and play through whatever in order to get out there and play. So this is definitely a defense that's got a strong bond and a pretty strong culture. So I would expect that we see something of a rotation. I would probably be lying to you if I said I know what the snap breakdown is going to be.
Sure.
But I think that just the fact that they have so many big pieces at the linebacker position, they're going to find a way to get them on the field. I mean, to the point of Kirby Smart, one of the things that Kirby is best known for is constantly rotating guys in. That's why when you look at Georgia preseason data and you try to figure out how many returning starters they have, it's often a misnomer because they rotate so many guys in on defense. Penn State can do something like that. I don't think they're quite as deep as Georgia, but Penn State can do something like that at a good number of the linebacker and defensive line positions just because they're so well versed.
That's awesome. All right, let's talk secondary, which is close to my heart. So you've got Elliott Washington starting at one cornerback after playing well as a backup last year. And I'm told he runs a 4.29 40. Can that be real? And then AJ Harris returns at the other cornerback, and he could be a top pick in next year's NFL draft. He'll make life miserable for the best wide receiver on the opposing team. Kenny Wesley and Davian Collins also in the mix for snaps. Nickelback Zion Tracy split some time last year, but I think will be the starter this year. He had that big pick six against Ohio State. And at safety, I've got returning starters, senior Zakee Wheatley, across from sophomore DeJuan Lane with King Mack, Antoine Belgrave Shorter, also in the mix for snaps potentially. So they were really good last year. Is this the kind of elite secondary that can go toe-to-toe with Ohio State? Let's just put it out there. Can they do it and slow them down a little bit?
I like AJ Harris. I do like AJ Harris. I think AJ Harris is the real deal. I understand why there's first round steam on him. My initial thought is that the secondary is a little bit green.
Okay.
And so if there is an Achilles heel, again, I'm probably even exaggerating by calling it that, but if I'm splitting hairs, the secondary is the spot that I would look to, I think, first on this defense, and point to as an area where I'd feel better if there were a little bit more development. Now, they're very good at developing defensive backs, don't get me wrong.
Right.
And by the time this is all said and done, their secondary will be fine. But as we're talking now, end of July, that's the one spot on the defense that, just in general, I would say the back seven, even though I do like the linebackers, the back seven's the area where they probably could use a little bit more depth.
Sure.
And, I'm curious to see how that plays out, if that ends up being a factor at all. But again, it's hard to feel too bad about this Penn State defense, given all the talent that they've got on this roster.
Oh, absolutely. It's an embarrassment of riches, really. It's fantastic. So let's turn to the specialists just briefly. Nittany Lions return their starting kicker, punter, long snapper, kickoff specialist, and both returners. Walk-on Ryan Barker was a great story last year, 15 of 18 field goals. And then punters, Riley Thompson. And I've got Nicholas Singleton listed as kick return and Devontae Ross as punt returner. Does that sound right to you? And what are your expectations for the Penn State specialists?
Well, I mean, getting their kicker situation sorted out last year was important because they had a different guy and it didn't really work out. They tried 2 years in a row with him, and before they made the switch over to Barker, he was pretty good. So I think the kicking game's in a pretty good spot. Otherwise, look, they've got enough playmakers in the return game that I think whether it's Singleton or someone else, they can put somebody out there who's hopefully going to give them a little bit better field position than they started with last year, because that was one of the issues that we saw with the offense. Even though they had dynamic playmakers that they could put back to return kicks and punts, starting field position with the offense was something like 80th nationally. It was definitely one of the few stats that lagged behind the competition. So whoever they put back there, whether it's Singleton or somebody else, I'd like to make sure that there's just a little bit more wherewithal with respect to the situation where they're starting the drive from, and hopefully putting the offense in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as Gopher fans, we are very familiar with that feeling and that concern. So
I was gonna say we're really familiar with their special teams because they beat us on a fake punt last year.
There's that.
Right.
Right. So I feel like the specialists will be good because what I saw looked great from Penn State's perspective in that game, at least.
No, for sure. Yeah, the field position thing is just, again, it's like one of the, I've got a big spreadsheet here, and it's one of the only red spots on the whole thing
Sure.
talking about average field position, and that on some level is a function of special teams, or can be a function of special teams. So just something to be mindful of. Relative to the field, I think Penn State's, if you kind of look at what they did, kicking, punting, and also coverage, it was about middle of the pack in college football on the national perspective. So there's definite room for improvement there.
Mm-hmm.
So Ty, you've been more than generous with your time. Do you have enough time to play the schedule game with us?
I would love to play the schedule. I play the schedule game on my show all the time. Let's do it.
Awesome. It is pretty much our favorite thing on this show.
Great.
So I'm going to pull it up and let's go through this Penn State schedule. So to the effect, I'm really struck when you talk about the secondary being green and, them being potentially a concern early in the season while they get acclimated. It seems like there's a pretty good runway. You host Nevada, FIU, and Villanova. I don't think that's not a slate that's going to scare anybody for Penn State. I hesitate to write teams off right away, but I think when you're talking about a team at the level of Penn State, that's 3 wins. That's 3 wins where you get to play a lot of guys, where you get to experiment with different things, where your new secondary can get a lot of reps. And, that really, I think, works out. I think that bodes well for, the new guys that you have to break in and some of the transfers you have at other positions that need to get acclimated to their new roles. So how do you feel about that non-conference slate going into it?
I mean, I'll take it, right? You'll take it. You'll absolutely take it. And to the point of runway in the secondary, I mean, I'm just kind of hearing you back as I'm saying it. I mean, Penn State does bring back 2 all Big Ten defensive backs.
Yes.
Right. In AJ Harris and Wheatley. So this is not to say that this is a crazy young group and they're going to be learning on the fly and they're going to be figuring it out. I'm speaking more to like the overall depth of this roster. So
sure.
I like where they're at there. I like the fact that they've got a runway on 2 sides of this thing, right? Obviously you play Nevada, FIU, Villanova to start things off. You're going to get ample opportunities for perhaps some rotation along the front of your defense, perhaps to get some folks on the back end a little bit more acclimated about what's going on, and then maybe start to figure out who your guys are out wide. That's what I'm looking for in those first couple weeks. I don't expect Nevada to come in and give Penn State much of a game, but Nevada was plucky last season under Jeff Choate's first season.
Yep.
So curious to see, I guess, what that looks like, just as somebody who kind of covers this on the national level. But between Nevada, FIU, and Villanova, that's a pretty good warm-up for the Oregon game at the end of September.
Yeah. So let's talk about, here's the thing I'm struck about, Ty. We talk about a couple years ago with Michigan, they brought all the guys back, the schedule lined up, everything worked out, they won the title. Ohio State last year, there were some bumps in the road, but everybody came back, the stars aligned, they won the title. You get this bye week before Oregon. And that seems like, and you've also, we'll talk later about the bye week, your second bye week, but it seems like you got the 2 best bye weeks you could have gotten to have 2 weeks to get ready to host the Ducks. So, Oregon's fantastic. Obviously, they have, unlimited money to spend in the portal, and they have done so and filled in really well. They did lose Evan Stewart to injury, but they have, a lot of different weapons out wide. Dante Moore is getting rave reviews at quarterback. Their defense looks really good, especially that defensive line and those edges. Those edge rushers are just terrifying. It's a really tough game, but I guess, John and I have talked about this a lot, and it feels like if Penn State's going to break through and win a national title this year, psychologically, I feel like they either have to beat Oregon or Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Not saying you have to beat both of them to win the whole thing, but you need to beat one of them to say to the world, like you said, Ty, you referenced earlier that there's been a knock that Franklin has not won enough of those games against fellow Blue Bloods. And here's his chance. And he's got 2 weeks to get ready for it. It seems, I don't know, it works out pretty well.
Well, it works out really well. And to the point, you couldn't ask for a better bye week setup. Look, they can make the playoff even if they lose to both those teams. That's just the reality of the situation. And as Ohio State proved last year, you can take a loss or two. You can take an ugly loss or two. And if you get hot at the right time, this is a tournament. You can find your way into the title game and maybe have a shot at this thing. So, Penn State, I would be surprised if Penn State's not in the playoff, frankly, because of all they have coming back here. Even if they take 2 losses, I don't think they'll take 2 losses to both of these teams. No. The setup for the Oregon game, though, is the most advantageous because it's not just at home after a bye. It's also a night game on a whiteout. And so the crowd will be tuned up. It will be a cross-country trip for Oregon. It will clearly be what I have to imagine would be the biggest road game of young Dante Moore's career.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly in the most hostile setting that he's ever played. So you have to like Penn State's chances in that game. If I'm targeting one of those 2 games between Oregon and Ohio State, obviously the Ohio State game's in Columbus. So I like the chances for Penn State at home against Oregon, given the atmosphere and given the fact that it's still relatively early. There is some youth on the Oregon offense that I think is going to be working itself out. Like, they actually have a lot of the same questions as Penn State does. The receiver room, you mentioned Evan Stewart's injury. I like DeCorey Moore, who's their freshman. I like some of the pieces. I think I probably feel better about their receiver room than Penn State's, but it is still pretty early. Mm-hmm. We also don't know, to the point of Dante Moore, as the first-time Oregon starting quarterback. Of course, he started previously a bit at UCLA, but we don't know how he's going to do in a setting like this. And there are some questions about the secondary, too, on the Oregon side that I think Penn State could take advantage of if they can get their receiver room sorted in the first couple weeks of the season. So I'm rambling. This is a very good setup for Penn State in this game.
Yeah, 2 things that jump out at me about this game is that Oregon, one, they have 4 new offensive linemen starters.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That is a lot to get integrated even in a month's time. And then to go against the juggernaut that is the Penn State defensive front, I feel like that plays in your favor. And then I got to tell you, Ty, John and I have both been to whiteouts, but different whiteouts. You were there and you saw Auburn, right?
Yep.
And I was there when Minnesota was there. And all I can tell you is that it's so loud, you can't really think or hear the thoughts inside your head. And I think Minnesota had 4 or 5 pre-snap penalties in like the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
It's very loud. Yeah.
If Dante Moore, I don't care how ready he is. I don't care how loud Autzen is. It's not a whiteout in State College. And I just think that's going to be really tough for he's not a first-time starter, but he is a first-time starter in this offense.
Yeah, I mean,
it's early. It's so early.
Yeah,
I think like most teams that are trying to integrate some new pieces, Oregon's going to be in this position. Oregon's going to be right there at the end as well. Maybe not for the Big Ten title, but definitely in the playoff conversation. Mm-hmm. They will have more than their fair share of big games this season, but sometimes it just takes a little bit to work that out. And I think if you're Penn State, you feel good about catching Oregon early, especially in that setup.
Yeah, I mean, I have this as a win for Penn State. I think, like, for just alone the whiteout, I mean, I just think that's something that you can't fully prepare yourself for. And I'm not entirely sure if Oregon has ever played at Penn State ever before. If it was, it must have been a long time ago. I don't know if that's ever happened. Probably not. But, the fans, Oregon fans, I expect that, a number of them to travel, even though it's very difficult to get to Happy Valley.
We'll see if they can see the field. I couldn't from the Minnesota section. I needed binoculars up in there.
But I expect this to be a win for Penn State for sure.
Yeah, I've got this as a Penn State win also for all the reasons that you gentlemen said. So if that happens, Penn State will, be 4-0. And at worst, second in the country, I'm guessing, with the winner of Ohio State, Texas, probably number 1 at this point in the season. So that would be big for Penn State. Then you got to go on the road and play at UCLA. Look, I like Deshaun Foster. I think his team played hard last year, but it's fully a rebuild. The pieces aren't all in place. And Nico, I don't know, man. Maybe it works, but when you bring in a guy after spring ball, that's hard. That's hard to come in and learn an offense that fast and adjust to all your new teammates. And he's a guy who, with maybe some questions about what motivates him truly, is it the love of the game or, trying to get the best financial situation he possibly can, which I'm not hating on him for, but there's just a lot of questions with Nico. UCLA, I don't think they have the offensive weapons to stress Penn State.
So I agree. I think Oregon's a win. I would mark Oregon down as a win.
Yep.
The only thing about that UCLA game is that it is a cross-country trip, presumably against a team that won't be very good, that will clearly have Penn State circled on their schedule. We call it the letdown game. Everybody calls it a letdown game, but it's a letdown game. It's potentially a letdown game after a whiteout, traveling cross-country for a game that feels far less meaningful. Look, Penn State should win that game, even if there is any kind of letdown effect. And one of the things that we talked about on our show when we recorded a little bit earlier today, just going through the Big Ten kind of from a bigger picture level, like they get Nico. I think Nico's an upgrade at quarterback. They are worse literally everywhere else.
Yeah.
Every other position, they're worse.
Yeah.
So what are we hanging our hat on here? If Nico wanted to go to a better situation, like I've heard in the media lately, and it was about his supporting cast at Tennessee, and he wanted to get a better contingent around him, and it wasn't, no, don't worry, it wasn't about money. Regardless, he's getting less money now, and the supporting cast is worse.
Yeah.
So I'd be very surprised if UCLA, were to knock off a school like Penn State, in a situation like that. Penn State's just a much better team. After the Oregon game, they're on the road to UCLA. I think that should be a win. After that, it's like back home, Northwestern. That should be a win.
Yeah.
The one that I think about often, and it's because way back when I was at the Iowa 6 Penn State 4 game in State College.
You were there. Wow.
I was there. I've never
Legendary.
fully healed from it, Mike.
I believe it.
October the 18th, it's on the road at Iowa.
Yeah.
Who I actually happen to like Iowa a lot this year, more than I expected. I did a lot of studying up on Iowa. A lot of Mark Gronowski highlights are in my YouTube algorithm. And I'm very curious to see what version of Iowa we get this season. We know that they were improved somewhat on offense a year ago while still maintaining a pretty good level of defense. And that's a game that always just tends to give Penn State fits. So that's one in particular. It's kind of a getaway game before a bye. After the bye, then they go to Ohio State. So that's a very tenuous stretch of the schedule. There's a pretty good chance they're undefeated, like 6-0 going into that game. And Iowa will have a lot to play for. That will be an interesting test for the Nittany Lions.
Well, I mean, Iowa looked better because I think Caleb Johnson will make any team look better personally, or their offense, I should say. And, our question is when it comes to Iowa is we've always had a problem with their receiving room. I think Gronowski is definitely an upgrade, but
I mean, since Marvin McNutt, yeah. It's been a minute.
I mean, they've essentially been recruiting wide receivers at a G5 level, and not to say someone can't show up this year, but I guess I have not seen it. Tight end, that's another story. I'm sure they'll have a very solid tight end. I think a string
or
is
four.
Four. Yeah, probably. But I think it'll be interesting. I mean, it's always tough. Let's just put it that way. It's always tough playing Iowa. We know better than anybody else, and we know that Penn State and Iowa definitely have had kind of their little bit of a back and forth in some ways over the years. So
and they're going to shorten the game, and their punter's going to be better than yours and all that kind of stuff. So when they flip the field position battle, it all gets frustrating. Yeah, I agree with you that Iowa's a tough game. Iowa has a fantastic offensive line this year.
Very good. One of the better lines in the conference.
That's what scares me.
True.
And they have very good running backs, so they're going to have a running game. And they have, I think, we talk about Gronowski. Yeah, I think he's an upgrade as a passer. But I think what's really interesting is he's a threat to run.
Yeah,
he is a threat to run. And that's what I think I'm most interested in. And that's like, he's not a jitterbug with the ball. He's 6'3", he's 230. He's looking to run guys over.
Yeah.
And so South Dakota State, where he came from, they started kind of using that to their advantage. They'd snap the ball, stutter step, a few steps forward, and then suddenly he hits you over the top and takes advantage of your secondary. That's after a couple runs where he does drop back and just run up the middle, looking to do some headhunting. So I think it could work really well with the philosophy of Tim Lester, who has publicly stated and has a bit of a track record for wanting to get a little bit more vertical. Now, last year they had Caleb Johnson. Last year they just gave him the ball. This year they don't. This year it's going to be a little bit of a different mix, and we'll see how they kind of work Gronowski into that. But I'm very curious to see how they end up utilizing him. I'm very curious to see how against a better defensive line they are able to use his legs. Because that will be the test for me. Iowa's got a very difficult schedule this year. I know this isn't like the Iowa preview, but Iowa's got a very difficult schedule. They play a pretty good number of defensive lines that I think could give them fits. And I'm curious to see if some of the skills we saw on tape at South Dakota State for Gronowski translate to Big Ten play against some of these better schools.
Yeah, we've seen firsthand that a great FCS quarterback can absolutely make the jump and be a really good player.
Yes, of course.
I will say it took Brosmer about a month. Took him about a month to adjust. So it'll be interesting to see for Gronowski what the adjustment period is before he hits his height. But
Brosmer was nails like last couple weeks of the year. He was
unstoppable.
13 touchdowns in 2 games or 4 games or something crazy. I mean, he had a really good close to the season, and that's part of why I'm like not. Again, to take this in a completely different direction, that's part of why I'm interested in Minnesota this year, because he did sort of take Drake Lindsay under his wing. He did help him develop, and different players, different skill sets, I think. But I'm real curious to see if they can kind of continue that momentum that we saw with Brosmer down the stretch.
Well, I will never get mad about you talking about the Gophers, and I will say that I watch all the practices that are open. And Ty, I've been, I've seen every Gopher quarterback practice going back to Adam Weber, and Drake.
That's a tough beat, man.
Drake has the best arm. He's got the best arm. He's the most accurate, and it's the easiest for him that I've ever seen of a Gopher quarterback. So I know this is a Penn State preview. But yeah, he's going to be he's a redshirt freshman. It's not going to be, but the fact that, like you said, he had tutelage under Brosmer, and I do think he's going to be kind of a pleasant surprise in a game manager-y role this year, because the Gophers are going to be very run heavy.
They're going to run. They got to get more explosive in the passing game, though.
Yes.
They were 100. I was looking at this earlier, 133rd in the nation last year in just some of the stats that we look at with passing explosion. And it's, you lose Daniel Jackson. That does not help, obviously. No. They're going to have, I think, a pretty good ground guy like Darius Taylor, like the running back room, all that stuff. Like, you already know that I'm speaking to the choir here, but like, they got to get something down the field with this passing game. Otherwise it's going to be more of the same.
And to speak of what you said, Minnesota understood the assignment. They brought in Javon Tracy. They brought in Logan Loya. They brought in, brought in guys.
Absolutely.
So it'll be in Malachi Coleman. So it'll be interesting to see. But anyway, all the people listening for this Penn State stuff are like, what are these guys talking about now?
This is a Minnesota show now, boys.
Well, you were high on Brosmer before most people. So
You were. You called it.
All right. So I have a really bad tendency of just assuming every FCS quarterback is going to be nails.
Yeah.
And I did this with Cam Ward, to my credit.
Yes.
And I will never let anybody forget about this. When Cam Ward came to Wazoo from Incarnate Word, I watched every single snap that I could find online. Every single snap, some of which I downloaded illegally. All right. I was all in on Cam Ward from the jump. And it took a minute for that to percolate and for everybody to kind of come to the same conclusion. But I was all in on Cam Ward from the second he announced he was coming to FBS. And so I have done this now with a bunch of the quarterbacks who have come up from the FCS level. You can't always find the footage for all of them, but I did watch as much Max Brosmer as I could when he came up, and I've done the same now with Gronowski. I've done the same with others. And that's kind of like my pet project every offseason. And we'll see if I'm right. I don't know. I mean, I tend to give all these guys benefit of the doubt, so it's they don't all work out as much as I'm expecting, but I at least give it my best shot to try and figure out who's got game and who doesn't.
Yeah. Anyway, to bring it back to whether or not you're going to beat Iowa, I do think you're going to beat Iowa.
Same.
They should beat Iowa, right?
Because you have a lot more weapons than they do, and again, they don't have the receivers. And they don't have, I like their running backs, but they don't have a Caleb Johnson, and you got 2 of them. So Yeah,
I mean,
I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be a game you get out of and think, man, Ferentz always makes it hard. But like, I do think Penn State wins by multiple scores. Once
it's ugly.
all said and done.
It's an ugly game.
Yeah.
It's an Iowa style game.
Like 24-13.
Something like something like that. Iowa kicks a field goal or two, and even though the offense did take a step forward, a lot of that was on the back of Caleb Johnson this year. So, how they changed the calculus now that he's gone and integrate Gronowski will be interesting to see. But I tend to agree.
And then the biggest game of the year in the Big Ten, according to I know because I did a Twitter poll and it won by a lot. You've got 2 weeks to get ready to go to the shoe and play the Buckeyes.
Yep.
And oh man, after last year's game and the way it went down and just the way the Penn State, Ohio State games are always such intense contests with a lot of, emotions on both sides and just fantastic players. I agree. I do think it's the game of the year in the Big Ten. And I'm so excited to see that Buckeye offense against this defense. Because I feel like I know what's going to happen the other way. You're going to run the ball. You're going to score enough, to make it, you're going to score enough to be in that game. And it's just like, can the defense do their part and slow down, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and just and Max Clare and just the unbelievable amount of playmakers that Ohio State always has. And that's going to, that to me, that's the matchup. And I'm just pumped to see it. This game feels really coin flippy to me. It feels really coin flippy to me. I have a hard time knowing who's going to win.
Yeah.
I'm picking Ohio State.
Okay.
I'm on Ohio State. And for as much as I would like to see James Franklin get over this hump as a Penn Stater, there's a trend here. And the trend line is he can't beat Ohio State. He can't beat Ohio State at home. Mm-hmm. I got to beat him on the road. And there's a reason that even though Ohio State has so many new faces, they're still a 5-1 favorite to win the national championship. This is going to be a good team. Mm-hmm. And especially by that point in the season, by the time November rolls around, they will have had ample opportunity to get these guys comfortable. Julian Sayin or whoever ends up being quarterback, right? Like these guys will be set. They're not going to be as green as they were in early September. So it will be, by that point, I think, a fully formed Ohio State team. I like their talent. I like the fact for them that it's in Columbus. And for as much as I'd like to say that Penn State wins that game, I don't think they're going to.
Well, Ohio State also has a bye week coming off the Wisconsin game. So.
Okay. So
yeah.
It's they both have buys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. I guess if I have to pick, like I said, I feel like it's coin flippy. If I have to pick, I'm picking the Buckeyes in the shoe because we're talking about, the Buckeyes in the shoe. And although I've seen them lose in the shoe in person, it's not something that happens very often. But, even so, or John, what do you think about this one? Sorry.
I mean, I until I see it happen, I'm kind of with Ty. I think, I think it'll be a great game. I think it could be very close. I'm not saying that it's an impossibility that Penn State could pull off the upset, but, I got to go with Ohio State until I see it actually happen. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
But even if that happens, that still leaves you at 7-1, probably ranked in the top 5, because I assume it's going to be, I don't think it's a thing where Ohio State runs you. I think it's a very close game that comes down to the last possession. And I do think, Julian Sayin, I watched that whole Ohio State spring game. He's the truth.
He's incredible. Is. He's going to be the next big thing. And, again, there were plenty of people last year already saying he's the best quarterback on the roster.
Right.
And they had a pretty good one, as it were with Will Howard. So look, I'm of the mind that that's just a really tough spot for Penn State. The good news is in 2025, you can get away with the loss against a top 5 team on the road, and it's not going to hurt your playoff chances.
Not going to hurt you at all.
It's not going to hurt you at all. And, I think they'll be fine. I still think Penn State's going to go pretty far, but I think that's one they're going to take on the chin.
So then you're 7-1, and I think, it's going to be a pull out, take out all your frustration on an upstart Indiana Hoosiers. Who knows what Kurt Signetti might say in the press the week before this game? Could be anything. Could be something incendiary. Could be something about your playmakers or your quarterback or your assistant coaches, or I don't know. But he's probably going to say something. Indiana has great receivers. They have a really good quarterback. they're going to have a good defense. Kamara is a really good player up front for
all
them.
three levels of the defense.
Yep,
they have
D'Angelo
some stars.
Pons. Yeah, they have playmakers everywhere. My issue is I just don't know if Indiana, I think maybe for 2 quarters, 3 quarters, they can hold up. I don't know if they're good enough on the line of scrimmage yet to go toe-to-toe with a juggernaut like Penn State that's as deep as you are up front, as talented as you are up front. I feel like over the course of the game, eventually the Hoosiers are going to wear down. And my significant other is from a big Hoosier family. So I'm not, or no, whoops, wrong hat. So it's not, yeah. So I want to pick, I want to talk myself into Indiana here, but I can't.
I like Indiana a lot. a lot. I don't necessarily share the concern about the offensive line. I think they're off. Let's put it this way: their offensive line got better. I think their offensive line is still in a really good spot. But I would say I am unconvinced at this point that they've got the firepower to go toe-to-toe with Penn State.
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, even if the line holds up okay throughout the course of the season. And, one of the things that's been most interesting to watch with Curt Cignetti, how he has now handled like this post-playoff reality for Indiana. They've gone from this situation where they're trying to take small school guys and integrate them into the program. Now they're getting power conference starters to transfer in and be part of the roster. So the roster's better. I think it's definitely better, even though there's some turnover and some things to to consider when you're figuring out how Indiana stacks up. But I love Fernando Mendoza. I think he's the real deal. I like what they did at running back with Roman Hemby. You're right. They've got good pass catchers. I think the offense will be fine. And I think they'll be stronger across the board as well. Maybe not quite as good on defense in the front seven, but generally there really is a good case to be made for Indiana having a good season. That said, Penn State's still better.
Yeah.
I'm vamping here a little bit, but Penn State is still the better team. They should be the better team. I hope it's a neck crack situation where if there is any lingering frustration from the Ohio State game, they're able to take it out on the Hoosiers. That is a home game, which I like. And, I think Penn State will be primed and ready for that one.
This feels 38-21-ish to me. I think they scheme up some touchdowns early. Indiana does. They get Elijah Surratt, and then once you figure out what their game is, I think it's going to be hard for them to do a lot.
I think Indiana's going to find itself in a lot of weird shootouts this year.
Yeah.
And I'm that's not to say this is, one of those games, but I'm sort of the mind, and that's what I jotted down in my notes here, that there's going to be a random game against Maryland where it's 44-41 and everyone's looking at the score bug wondering how the hell did that happen? Like what's going on here? So I like Indiana a lot. Indiana is kind of like in the tier of the Big Ten that I would put like the race for fourth, or I think that's how we labeled it when we did our show, but they're one of the teams that I think is good enough to be kind of on that 4 line throughout the course of the season after the all is said and done. But Penn State should win that game. They really have no excuse to not win that game.
Yeah, I think it's really the Hoosiers defensive line. I mean, just to, when I expect, Penn State to establish that run game, I think that's just going to wear on them, and they're not going to be able to withstand that onslaught for 4 quarters.
I think you double team Kamara and dare everybody, and see what happens with everybody else.
They've got 3 bona fide stars in Kamara, in Aiden Fisher at linebacker, and Pons, who you mentioned at cornerback, but they are replacing a lot elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so even though the defense may not be quite as good, it might be marginally worse, but they'll still be pretty good.
Yeah.
And that will still get you pretty far against this Big Ten slate. Now, the schedule is harder for Indiana.
Yeah.
But it will take them pretty far. It'll still be a formidable defense, but Penn State should be able to win that game.
Oh yeah, I've still got Indiana winning 8-ish games. I think they're good. I think they're a good team. But
I think they're like 9-3.
9-3. I think it's doable. Yeah. For sure. All right. So that puts your Penn State Nittany Lions at 8-1. I don't know how much we have to say about the Spartans. I think they're rebuilding. I think they'll be better this year. Your boy Aiden Childs, John, I know he's your favorite quarterback in the Big Ten, but I think he throws some oopsie daisy throws too much. And I don't know. I know I know it's in East Lansing, but I just don't think this one's competitive for more than a half.
Well, let's not forget that this is the land grant trophy. Some kid in 7th grade shop, wood class or wood making class, like made this thing, and it's beautiful.
Sure.
And, so it's a big deal here. All right, it's a rivalry. Even I know Penn State's unrivaled, but it's a trophy game in the Big Ten. So let's give it the respect it deserves.
Sure.
I used to make the joke that this never felt like a rivalry to me. I mean, they always would talk about this as a rivalry when I was in school there. And the only thing that we ever noticed as students was that there was a pretty big blood drive that seemed to get a little bit more attention than the football rivalry. Not that the football wasn't important, but people cared more about the blood drive rivalry as opposed to what happened on the field. So it's a trophy game. You never know what's going to happen in a trophy game. I think we have a pretty good idea for what's going to happen in this one. And even though I love Aiden Childs, I like Nick Marsh, I hope they build around them. I think the defense will be better. I think the defense will definitely be formidable to some extent, but Penn State should win this game too.
Yeah. And I also just don't think it's a good matchup. Like Sparty wants to play. It's Joe Rossi's defense. He wants to play bend, don't break all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to break if you just let the other team's going to run on you, and you're going to break if you play that. I just don't, I think you need to force the issue a little more with Penn State if you're going to have any success slowing them down, as opposed to sitting back and just death by a 1,000 cuts.
You need to do what Notre Dame did to Drew Aller. Mm-hmm. And you need to get in his face. You need to have guys that can play really tight man coverage that can force receivers to get up. Well, let's see what your pass catchers can do against a really good man defense. And Notre Dame was able to use that down the stretch to give them just enough separation to win that game. I don't know if that's Michigan State's game this year.
Yeah,
awesome.
I tend to have like an affinity for quarterbacks that are, what I like to call gamers, that just seem to have these, abilities to improvise and make some like plays that nobody probably should. Obviously, then tends to then go make a massive mistake on the next play. But Aiden Childs, man, I think he's got a super high ceiling, but he's got to learn to rein it in a little bit. Take a little, not be as risky.
This is gonna get lopsided. All right. Yeah. Time marches on, so we should go a little faster. But I will say Nebraska, that's an interesting game. If this was in Lincoln, I could talk myself into this being more. My thing with Nebraska is they're going to be able to throw the ball. Are they going to be able to run the ball at a Big Ten level or not? Because I just don't believe in their running backs until proven otherwise. And I do think, and the defense, losing Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson and their defensive coordinator, are they going to be the run stuffing defense they've been the last couple of years, or is it going to be a little easier to get yards on them this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see this or not. Probably not. I'm trying to hold it up as best I can, but this is my notepad from earlier today when Dan and I recorded our Big Ten Part 1.
Nice.
And on this side, I probably shouldn't even hold this up. You can't see it. I'm sure.
I can pull it out. I can pull the thing off for a second so we can see it.
So on this notepad on this side over here, there's a star. The first star is next to Nebraska. And over on the other side is a star further down on the list that is also Nebraska. Nebraska was the team that Dan and I disagreed the most on.
Interesting.
This season, because, and my point is just that I think the variability of possibilities, there is such a range there. I could make a case for 6-6 as much as I can make a case for 10-2. Mm-hmm. So you tend to give Matt Rule in year 3 benefit of the doubt. He's done this before. But this is a tough schedule. Like, this is not necessarily a given that Nebraska is going to be one of the top tier teams in this league. I've got them in my tier that's contending for 4th place. I don't think they'll be in 4th place. I've got them finishing 6th with a mark of like 9-3. I'm pretty high on Nebraska, generally speaking.
Which would be a really good year.
Be a huge year. Huge year. 9-3, 8-4. Like, I think you'll take that if you're a Nebraska fan. I like what they did. I think they got better across the board. But again, that game is in State College. Mm-hmm. It is late in the game. And despite the fact that Nebraska has developed a lot and clearly made the roster better, I still think Penn State's just way deeper. There's a reason that they're going to be like a preseason top 5 team. It's because they're way deeper. They're better at pretty much every skill position, maybe with the exception of, a handful here and there. I like what Nebraska did with Dane Key, bringing him over from Kentucky, and Isaiah Hunter from Cal. Those guys I think they'll give them nice pop in the receiver room. But you combine that with losing your defensive coordinator, and as you said, some of the key pieces. By that point in the season, they will have hopefully worked a lot of that out. But This is a situation where I could see them just being overmatched in a game against Penn State. That Penn State will know at that point if they do lose to Ohio State, they will know that this is essentially the last big game on their schedule, and they have to run it up as best they can on Nebraska.
And Dylan Raiola did say today that he planned that they were capable of winning a national title. So there you go. He said that today at media days. I'm with you, John. Ty. I think Penn State rolls here. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Penn State rolls as well. Look, in both, contrary to what a lot of Nebraska fans think of us on Twitter, we are big Matt Rule fans. We really actually believe in him as a head coach. Yeah. Again, for us, it's just been, a lot of off-season hype for many, many years, and we just want to see that, transpire on the field. So, which is possible. I mean, I think both Mike and I have talked about that. 8 wins seems very, very likely. Yes, 9-3 is also possible, but I'm leaning more towards 8 at this point in time, which again would be a very, very good season for.
Well, yeah, because we both got them losing at Minnesota.
Exactly.
Yeah. And look, I like I like how Nebraska used the portal.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that this is the year finally where the offensive line stops being a liability and starts being more something they can build around. I think they've got the pieces now up front to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely reason for optimism. It's part of why I'm pretty high on them.
Sure.
But again, this is too much for me to say that they're going to beat Penn State on the
board. Agreed.
Last up, you've got at Rutgers. Look, I like Greg Schiano. They play defense. They run the ball. This isn't going to be close. They don't have nearly the athletes in place to compete with you.
No, and it's going to be a tough year for Rutgers. It's going to be a tough year for Rutgers. It's going to be a tough year in that the roster's probably better, the team is probably better, but the schedule's harder, and you might not notice it.
Yeah.
That could be, and they could be in a they could quit. They could be a thing where Penn State beats them in the first quarter and Rutgers is like, we're done. This has been a rough year. Let's pack it in. So, and plus Penn State will probably be running the score up to try to, be ranked as high as possible. So there's that also. We know James Franklin is capable of that. So Ty, that's 11-1.
Yep.
You go 11-1, you're playing for the Big Ten title and you're, probably looking at getting that bye in the playoff.
It's a rematch with Ohio State in the Big Ten title, and Penn State wins this one.
Yeah. Okay. I like it.
It's
on
a rematch.
Neutral field.
Yeah, it's a rematch. They don't got to deal with the shoe. Ohio State doesn't have to deal with Happy Valley. But Penn State's got a bit of a history for being a gamer in that Big Ten title game.
That's true.
Relatively recent memory. We saw it last year. Last year was a hell of a game. It
was a great game.
We can go all the way back to like the era of Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley against Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game.
Down 3 scores coming back. Yeah.
I mean, I was at a friend's apartment. We were pissing off all the neighbors, yelling at the tops of our lungs for that because, it was just an incredible thing. So they have a tendency to step up in big games like that. Yeah. We've seen that before. And I think if they're going to get one over on Ohio State, that's the one. These are 2 playoff teams. They're both going to be in the playoff. But if it's going to happen for Penn State, it's going to happen in that rematch against Ohio State, I think, in probably Indianapolis, Big Ten title.
Yeah, I'm picking the same thing. I think Penn State wins the Big Ten this year. That's been my belief for a while now. So, yep.
Well, then, Ty, you've been more than generous with your time. Thank you so much for, joining us. I guess the last question I got to ask before you go, and feel free to plug yourself again, the Solid Verbal. Everyone, if you don't listen to the Solid Verbal, you should follow them on audio, follow them on YouTube. Then you can see Ty's gorgeous face, and that's always good too. So I got to ask, is this the year? Does James Franklin win the national title? Does he do it? Penn State, and also does Paul Feinbaum's head immediately explode after the Big Ten wins 3 titles with 3 teams in 3 years?
His head would explode if they won 3 in a row. Yeah. I'm with you on
different
that one.
teams.
This is going to sound like a cop-out. It is not a cop-out. This is just me being honest with you guys because you've been so gracious and invited me on this show. I have yet to work out who my national champ is.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because at time of this recording, I've gone through and done my intense study cram session for every conference with the exception of the SEC and Notre Dame. Now, I know Notre Dame pretty well at this point. Okay, I'm not worried about them.
Right.
But I have not done the SEC and gone into detail yet with what I'm expecting out of that conference. I can tell you that every preview magazine that I have gone through, and I've gone through pretty much all of them, everybody either has Penn State or Texas, and in many cases they're playing each other for the national championship. So I want to give myself an opportunity to take a look at Texas for my own kind of benefit, and come to a kind of like an independent conclusion there. But let's put it this way: if Penn State is not in that Final Four, I would be very surprised. I think Penn State will have every opportunity to get back to a semifinal, to potentially get to the national championship game. They have that kind of roster in place where it should all be there for them. They will have an opportunity to avenge the loss last year, whether it's against Notre Dame or somebody else in the semifinals. So that's as far as I'm willing to go right now. But if you check out the Solid Verbal at solidverbal.com or wherever you get your podcasts, or right here on YouTube, you can get my prediction in I guess a couple weeks from now, before the season starts.
Yeah, and I will just say that the Solid Verbal will be linked, so you can get both to their YouTube and to their Twitter from this episode. And they also have a Patreon tier. So if you get really into the Solid Verbal like we all are, you might want to take that next step and support them that way. So Ty, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Yeah. Like, it's really been a privilege, and we appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invite. We got to get you guys some hats.
Yes.
I got to get you guys some hats, so we'll figure that out offline here.
Yeah.
Would love that. Yeah.
So we always appreciate people spreading the word about what we do and being supportive listeners. So it's been awesome to talk some Penn State with you guys. Appreciate the work that you both do, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds great, Ty. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Oh, he was saying thank you, and I cut it off. Well, let me put it back on. He was saying thank you.
Thank you. It's all right.
I didn't mean to click it. I was like waiting till you got done, good. And then I did it as you did it. All right.
No problem. Yeah. So just let me know when it goes out. I'll beam it out to everybody. And Mike, I'll talk to you separately. We'll get you guys some hats or shirts or something. Hook you up.
All right. Sounds great, Ty.
It, man.
Cool. Thank you guys. Take care.
All right. You too.
All right.
That was cool.
That was great. Oh my god.
I can't believe he hung out that long.
Yeah.
Like, for a guy who gets paid to podcast to hang out that long for free.
Yeah.
I'm grateful, because
we're honored. And I mean, this guy, he's one of the OGs. So for him to spend that much time with us, and
is at the top of the game. I mean, I think the Solid Verbal is the best independent podcast out there.
Yeah.
And all the other big podcasts are corporate. And guess what? The corporate shows just cover the helmet schools most of the time.
Absolutely.
Whereas the Solid Verbal, covers everything. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why we appreciate it so much. That's one of the reasons why we were so happy to have Ty on. Mm-hmm. John, when I look at Penn State and I think, can they win a national title? I really think it's just, can Drew Aller complete a higher percentage of his passes down the field?
Yeah.
Because if they do that and they connect on those longer shots to go with the mid-range and the short stuff and that unbelievable running game and that fantastic defense and their best coordinators in the country, I think it's can Drew Aller do it? And we're going to find out. And I think he can.
Yeah, I think he can. For me, it's all surrounding the wideouts. Even if they have one or two guys that are consistent and reliable that Aller can throw to, I think it is. I'm in agreement. I think it's game over. I don't think there's a better coaching staff in the country at this time. Last year that was Ohio State, it was evident, on both sides of the ball there. So Penn State now has spent that money and made sure and kept the players at home. They're really investing in this team being that national title contender, and I think they can absolutely pull it off. Now, I too had Texas. Right now, I have Texas and Penn State would be my national title game. I just, and I don't know. I need to do more research into Texas, but I assume that it's going to be pretty close. But as of right now, I just don't see any reason why you shouldn't believe in Penn State. But we're going to find out right away whether or not they have the pass catchers to really ensure that title run.
Yeah, when I look at the SEC, I think the teams that recruit the best are Texas, Alabama, and Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And Alabama and Georgia have question marks at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like I trust Texas more to come out of there, and we're gonna learn a lot when the Longhorns play the Buckeyes in week 1.
Well, in Texas is starting Arch Manning this year. He has not. I mean, so
he's supposed to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft already, even though he's barely played.
Well, and that's the thing too. Why I would lean Penn State is you have experience with Drew Aller, you know, and I'm not saying Arch Manning couldn't be the truth. I'm sure he's incredible.
I'm sure he's great, but
yes,
but there's great and there's winning a national title.
Exactly.
And I don't think he's winning it in year 1. I think if he comes back, like if he plays this year, and he comes back next year. But Texas has been right there. They've made the semifinals 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So they're going to be a factor. Is Gunnar Stockton any good at Georgia? That's the question. Because if he's good, then maybe Georgia's got a chance out of there.
Mm-hmm.
I know Ty, when you're talking about the national title hunt, Ty's really high on Clemson, actually, from listening to Solid Verbal. He's got them, you know, coming out of the ACC and thinks Cade Klubnik's the truth and all that kind of stuff. So, so I could see that too. I could see them being a real contender. It's gonna be a really fun year.
Yeah.
You know, throughout the sport, from wherever you are, whether your team is going 6-6 or 12-0. I mean, obviously, if you have a losing record, it's not as fun. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a really exciting year with a lot of different competition for those different rungs of college football, for the Big Ten title versus the, you know, outside playoff contender and all that kind of thing. I think there's a lot of teams in every conference that can do it. And the fact that Penn State recruits at an elite level. They don't quite recruit at a Michigan level. They definitely don't recruit at an Ohio State level. So Penn they recruit well enough to win a national title, but the stars have to align a little more than they do at an Ohio State or an Alabama or a Texas.
Which is why, obviously, they invested in their coordinators. I mean, that to me is what's going to absolutely give them the edges, because those two coordinators are going to know exactly what to do with that personnel.
Dude, to have Kotelnicki and Knowles, arguably you have the best offensive coordinator and defense coordinator in college football on the same team.
Yeah.
On the same team. Yeah.
Oof.
It's going to be wild.
Well, this is a good one, man. Yeah.
It's great.
Did we close it out? Or
dude, close it. Let's take it home. It's already almost, I can't believe Ty stayed for an hour and 40 minutes.
I know.
I thought we were going to get 60 out of him, and I was going to be grateful for that. And then, but you know what? It wasn't us stretching out the schedule game. He went on a whole Minnesota tangent, a whole Iowa tangent.
Yeah, we know. We really appreciate it. We appreciate him coming on. Hopefully he'll be wanting to come on again in the future, whether it's previewing next year Penn State, or who knows, whatever else.
Or if they win the national title, maybe we could bring him on just to gloat.
That'd be amazing.
Just to have, just love that. Be like, Ty, we know you're busy. You want to come in for 10 minutes and just say, we won.
Yeah, well, maybe I guess next week, when we put out our next podcast, we'll talk a little bit about Big Ten Media Days. I know that's a lot that's going on right now. Yep. So we'll be paying close attention to that for all of you listeners. So look forward to that. But yeah, once again, you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26 and me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. And you can email us, We Live for Saturday, B1G@gmail.com. Please follow, like, especially on YouTube, subscribe. That would be fantastic. It would really help us out a lot.
Yeah, Penn State fans, we're going to be riding hard all year. So if you came here just for the Penn State stuff, hang around. We'll be previewing all your competition. And also, if you look at the playlist, on our playlist, we've got all our 2025 previews. We have already previewed Oregon and Ohio State. So if you want to go back and check those out, you can see what we think about, your biggest competition for the Big Ten title this year. Awesome. All right. Well, John, this was awesome. I'm pumped. And yeah, excited. We'll see you. I think we're putting out another one later this week.
I think so. Yep.
So we'll see you in that one, and we'll talk Big Ten Media Days in depth when we do that. All right. See y'all in the next one.